Look at that.
So, okay, here we are. Good morning to everybody.
Good morning.
As we tried to do last week, we're going to try again this week to begin the second chapter of Pirkei Avot, and with the first Mishnah, a Mishnah that comes from Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, Rabbi Judah the Prince. We talked about him last time a little bit. There's so much that can be said about him, but we're going to not indulge in that. And we're going to go straight into the saying that we have here. So we're going to read it. We might have read it last time, but let's read it this time, and then we'll be able to start thinking about it and talking about it. As usual, we have, 2.5 different translations. We've got one camp of translations that pretty much, here and there might have some minor differences. And then we've got Rabbi Shapiro's translation as another version. So first, who's going to read to us the more common variety of translation? Okay, Jerilyn, you got it.
Rabbi taught, which is the path of virtue a person should follow? Whichever brings honor to his maker and brings him honor from his fellow human beings. Be as attentive to a minor mitzvah as to a major one, for you do not know the reward for each of the mitzvot. Weigh the loss incurred in performing a mitzvah against the gain. Conversely, weigh the gain of an avera against the loss. Ponder 3 things and you will avoid committing an avera. Keep in mind what is above you, an eye that sees, an ear that hears, a book in which all your deeds are recorded.
Okay, so the word avera, you don't have a translation for.
No.
Simple translation, that's unfortunate. They should have translated it somewhere. Is a sin, a transgression. The word literally comes from, crossing the line. That's the concern here is weigh what you think you might gain from doing a sin as opposed to the loss, and do not go, come to sin by thinking of 3 things. That's the end of his statement. Okay, just a couple of little any semi alternative versions before we get to the what we're expecting to be Rabbi Shapiro's different version. Yeah, Sarita.
This generally is the same, but with some slight differences in translation.
Right.
Rabbi said, which is the right course that a man should choose for himself? That which is an honor to him who does it, and which also brings him honor from mankind. Be heedful of a light precept as of a grave one, for thou knowest not the grant of reward for each precept. Reckon the loss incurred by the fulfillment of a precept against the reward secured by its observance, and the gain gotten by a transgression against the loss it involves. Reflect upon 3 things, and thou wilt not come within the power of sin. Know it is above thee, a seeing eye, a hearing ear, and all thy deeds written in a book.
Right. Okay, good. So there's a lot there. It's a mouthful. Before we get into the details of it, just okay, who's going to give us Rabbi Shapiro's? Okay, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, Rabbi Shapiro is quite finesses a lot of those things. Rabbi said, what is the right path? One that honors both self and others. Be as mindful of small acts as great ones, for you cannot know the consequences of either. If you decide to act, weigh the cost to you against the benefit to others. If you decide not to act, weigh the benefits to you against the cost to others. Sin's grip is loosened when 3 things are known: the seeing eye, the hearing ear, and the book of record.
Okay, so a lot of finessing, as you said, but also some differences in focus. So now, just a little bit at a time, we had Rabbi taught. The literal translation is Rabbi Omer, Rabbi says, right? That's the literal translation. And of course, contextually, he's saying these things and he's trying to teach us something, trying to get us to think a little bit. One of the things that we might notice, we've had a whole chapter of teachings, sayings before this. There's a little bit of a difference in the way that Rabbi's saying is couched, that we haven't that is different from what we've had before. It's the first time that we've had a certain way of doing this. So that's a vague question. So does anybody want to point out something very different about the way Rabbi is talking? Yes, Sarita.
So we've had all these other people talking about how sort of these are the things to think about. But here it's sort of a direct, I don't know if challenge is the right word, because it starts by asking us to think about sort of how to apply it. What does it all mean? What's the right way for us to be as human beings?
So let's make it even simpler. It starts with a question.
Yeah.
We've never had a question before.
Mm.
We've been told all kinds of wise things. The world stands on three things. Don't do this, do that. Be careful what how you look at people that come to your courtroom. They're all very wise sayings that tell us what's good and what's bad, what's the right way and what's the wrong way. This is the first time that we have somebody asking a question for us to ponder. Now, it might be rhetorical because he gives you an answer, but he's already, just by couching it in that way, rather than simply saying, this is the way you should act. Always walk on a path that is tiferet, et cetera, he doesn't do that. He starts with, what is the way? What is the proper way, the straight way, derech yeshara, the straight path? And then, so that's, I think, for us to note that he's already bringing this up as a kind of a process that people have to go through, rather than simply, here, take my word for it. I know what's good and what's bad. Just take this to heart, right? Which has its place. And certainly, like I said, we've had it many, many times. But this is the first time that he puts it into a cogitative context. Think about this a little bit. And of course, at the end, he also says, think about the following three things, so to prevent yourself from getting into trouble. And he's be careful about this and that and the other thing. So there's a lot of that follows from his initial decision to change how he's going to present his teachings. There's a lot of recognition that there's a little bit of struggle that's involved in this life of ours, right? It's not so simple, just do, just study Torah, do deeds of good, of loving kindness, and serve God. Okay. He's saying there's stuff here that requires us to mull it over and to consider and to weigh things. And I want to just bring out one more point, that Jerilyn's translation, can you just give us the very, very first, the question itself?
Which is the path of virtue a person should follow?
Okay, so unfortunately, that misses one of the key pieces of the Hebrew, which is, what is the straight path that a person should choose for himself, right? So it's not just follow these paths, but you have a choice. You have to decide. You have to, and then he goes through the weighing. Weigh this versus that, whatever, and we'll get into different, interpretations of that. So he's recognizing that this is a very personal project, that requires people to dig into themselves and to make choices and decisions, right? So that's something that has, I mean, it's implicit before, but this is the first time that we have it really upfront for us. Okay, so that's his question. His answer is, let's go through it one more time. Jerilyn, what's your translation?
Just for the answer?
Yeah, after he says, what's the path that blah, 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 that you should follow?
Whichever brings honor to his maker and brings him honor from his fellow human beings.
Okay, so let's
And
stop right there.
The word maker is capitalized.
Right. So that's one interpretive translation that we have here. But before we get into finding out what that might mean, and Sarita had a different translation, and obviously Bill read us another translation. Before we get to that part, the first part is whichever. The question talks in the singular, right? What is the straight path, the proper path, the right way? What is the right way that a person should choose to walk on, or to follow, or to abide by? Well, here's the right way, would be a possible expected way of answering. Instead, the answer is, and here in the word in Hebrew, the word is kol. All roads that satisfy the following criterion. Right? The word kol is all. So it's a proper translation. Whichever road that will do, that will satisfy this characterization, right? So what Rabbi is already saying is, there are a lot of different roads that might satisfy this, and that's part of what you have to choose. It's not just you have to choose between good and bad, but there are many, many possibilities that are not obviously good or obviously bad that you have to choose from. And the plurality of paths out there is recognized in a way that allows for more than one good choice. Right? It's not that there's only this one path. There is an overriding rule to judge the paths by, but what's that rule? That rule is very open-ended, right? So again, for my benefit, please, Jerilyn, what's the answer again?
Whichever brings honor to his maker and brings him honor from his fellow human beings.
Okay, so this is the translation of the word tiferet, right? The word tiferet. Kol shehi tiferet le'oseha, v'tiferet lo min ha'adam. Okay, so the word tiferet is here translated as honor. Sarita, what was your translation of that whole phrase?
Quite a bit different. That which is an honor to him who does it, and which also brings him honor from mankind.
Okay, so there's a different translation for oseha, but the tiferet is still translated as honor. Okay, so we're going to get to the oseha part in a second. Josie.
Yeah, Rabbi Shapiro does not mention the maker. He said, what is the right path? One that honors both self and others.
Right, so that's more in line with what Sarita was saying. And the question is, when the Hebrew word is oseha, the one who does it, or the one who makes it, or her, because in Hebrew everything is gendered. So the question is, who's doing the making? So and this all goes back, to hundreds and hundreds of years with different translators, different commentators. One is that the one that makes is God. God makes all the paths, right? God is the one who makes the world. Baruch Omer v'oseh. We say that in the traditional morning prayers. God is the one who speaks and does, right? Makes. So that's behind the Jerilyn's translation. And it's a translation, like I say, that many, many commentators put in. And then the juxtaposition is, do what is honorable in God's eyes and in the eyes of human beings. And we would have to think about whether that's to be taken for granted. Well, certainly if I do anything that's honorable in God's eyes, won't that be honorable in the eyes of human beings? Apparently, maybe it's not so obvious, right? Something that's honorable in the eyes of human beings, is that going to be honorable in God's eyes? Not necessarily. So, so balancing that, it has to satisfy both of those criteria. So again, we're holding on to a whole bunch of different things. The other idea, which is Sarita's translation and Rabbi Shapiro's translation, is it's about you, right? It's not about some creator, because Rabbi Shapiro, of course, is a little agnostic, if not, atheistic about that. But it's about you. What's the right thing for you? So it's going to be something that's going to reflect well on you, and also bring tiferet lo min ha'adam, and also be reflecting to the person who does it from other people as well. You have to be at peace with what it is, that this is what you are rightfully choosing is your choice. It's what you need to do, and other people will also then look at you with appreciation or respect. I want to get back to the word tiferet for a second. The word tiferet is a word that has all kinds of a whole field of meaning. There are many, many ways to go with it. And honor is certainly a possible translation, but it's not, I don't think, the most direct translation. Tiferet comes from the word pe'er, and pe'er means enhancement or glorification or beauty. Something that engenders a person who sees that as it engenders reverence, it engenders kind of a deep breath of ooh, and appreciation and even love. So in Kabbalah, Tiferet is an important term, and it's used as the core name of all of God's various, even contradictory powers coming together into a harmonious balance. So Tiferet has that sense, and it's used all the time in biblical phrases. We have King David saying, which we quote again in the traditional morning prayers, Lacha Hashem hagdula v'hagbura v'hatiferet v'hanetzach v'hahod. It's a part that we usually skip, but it's there as an introductory a paragraph right before the song at the Red Sea. So God, you have all of the greatness and all of the might, hagdula v'hagvura v'hatiferet, and the awesome majesty and beautiful aspects of holiness. So you're gorgeous. It's a kind of a gorgeousness. We had that word just a line before. If you have it in your edition, and of course in the Rabbi Shapiro edition, it's only, I think, at the front or at the back. I forgot where. All of Israel have a portion in the world, in the coming world, right? So who has that right there on the page? Beginning of chapter 2. Okay, Jerilyn, what do you got?
All Israel have a portion in the world to come, as it is written, your people shall all be righteous. They shall possess the land forever. They are a shoot of my planting, the work of my hands, in whom I shall be glorified.
Okay, the word I shall be glorified, lehitpa'er. Lehitpa'er, that is the verb, and tiferet is the noun. So glorification, glory, right? To glorify someone and say, wow, unbelievable, beautiful, terrific. You know, when we were blown over, so many people, or just plain just so happy with the poet laureate's presentation at the inauguration. Honor would not be the right way to describe what we felt toward her, right? Or what we felt about that moment. It was a wow moment. It was gorgeous. It was big and beautiful in a very palpable way. That was Tiferet. That was Tiferet. So here, what we're saying is every person has the possibility of attaining Tiferet. You have the capacity for Tiferet. Find that place of Tiferet. Find that power of Tiferet. Find that status of Tiferet in whatever you do. Give it your all. Do it fully. Or again, if it's toward God, give God the glory. That's what that phrase is, is coming from. Give God L'cha Hashem Hagdulah. To you we give the all of the power and might and glory, right? Give God the glory. So this is a statement that Rabbi is saying is anything that you do, right? He's not telling you which mitzvah to do or which good deed to do, which act of loving kindness to do. Whatever it is that you're going to choose to do it in a way that brings out the best in you, and that other people, if they hear that you did something like that, go, wow, nice, really good. Okay, that would be one way to read it, which I think is a little bit closer to at least appreciating what that word might signify. People raised their hands before, and I wanted to continue speaking. So if you want to speak, now's your chance. So I see Sarita, go ahead.
So this balancing yourself, what you think is right, glorious, honorable, as opposed to thinking about how other people will view it. Just thinking about how difficult that is, because different other people might view it differently. And I'm just thinking, not because I want to be political, although it seems to be hard to avoid that, reading in the paper today about the censure that the governor of Arizona, that Jeff Flake, that Liz Cheney have gotten from their, from high-ranking other members of the Republican Party for their choices. So they're, trying to weigh, what brings glory or honor from mankind, how difficult that can be.
Right. So of course they get opprobrium from some people, and they do get glory from other people. So the question is, which is the people that count? Would be one, simple and sad way to bring this out. I would also say that, and I admitted at the very beginning, this is going to be a tension, but the question asks, what is the derech yishara? What is the straight path? So you could read the answer as, how do I know which is a straight path? The answer is people will celebrate me. If I do something and they celebrate me, then it's the straight path. No, maybe it is, which of the many straight paths are there that you should choose? But in other words, a claim for choosing a crooked path doesn't count. Right? So in other words, doing the wrong thing is never going to be made right because people like it. Right? The question is, when you have many right things to choose, which right thing should you choose? right? Or how should you go about walking down that right path? So, I would say to some of those people who had the courage to finally stand up after years of moral failure and corruption on the part of half the country, I would say, and people have said it, in the end, you will be celebrated for having stood up for this. And, the people that have been against you will be remembered, right? All of your deeds are going to be written down in the book. That's his last statement, right? They will be remembered for people who gave you a hard time for doing this right thing. So, yeah, but it's definitely a struggle. And that's what I was trying to say at the beginning. Rabbi is the first one here who has admitted that it is a struggle, and that there's things here that are not as black and white as they've been seemed to be before. Anybody else wanted to say something that I cut off? Yeah, Josie.
I'm very drawn to the line about be careful with your small decisions as well as your big ones, because be mindful of small acts as great ones, for you cannot know the consequences of either. That's
Right.
Shapiro.
So that's our
That
next.
takes a lot of self-knowledge and attention to what's going on in your life, and that's hard to do.
So there, Rabbi Shapiro definitely pushes the meaning of the original text into a different arena. The Hebrew is, be very careful with a light mitzvah as with a very stringent mitzvah. So it's not the neutral term act. It's the very specific term, a mitzvah, commandment. So you're commanded to do this. But guess what? We all think this is a really serious commandment. That one is, give me a break. I've never done that mitzvah ever in my life, but I still do plenty of other good things. But that's where Rabbi Shapiro definitely steers away from. And he keeps it very much focused on the self and on saying whatever it is that you decide to do, don't think that your little acts are less significant than your big acts. And there's a lot of truth to that too. But actually it's a different direction. And as I said, it's very much more of a deflection of Rabbi's religious directive to a much more self-centered system of action and thinking. What Rabbi says is there are mitzvot, there are commandments, and God tells you to do things and God tells you not to do other things. And we can make all kinds of evaluations. Shabbos is very important, but not, mixing linen and flax, linen and wool, flax and linen is the same thing. That's not so important, right? So Rabbi says, oh yeah, how do you know, right? And part of the not knowing is because these are mitzvot. These are things that God has commanded. So the evaluation is God's and not yours. We're going to stop here. We can continue to dig in to this very rich teaching next week, I hope. Okay?
Yasher
Bye,
Koach.
Gazin.
Stay
Have a
safe,
good week,
everybody.
everyone.
Yasher Koach.